Taoiseach, over the weekend, President Higgins rang the alarm bells about the dangerous drift in Ireland's foreign policy away from neutrality and raised concerns about the composition of the government's consultative forum. Now, the President has to be somewhat constrained and diplomatic in what he says, but of course what he did say echoes what we've been trying to say for the last number of months, that the government has seized on the tragic, brutal, unjustifiable war of Putin in Ukraine to try and move Ireland away from neutrality and towards greater involvement with the project of EU militarisation and with NATO, and that this consultative forum is part of that campaign by Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, and tragically the Greens, to soften up public opinion against neutrality and towards closer alignment with EU militarisation and NATO. We held our breath a little bit, despite our scepticism on what the forum would look like, but then we saw this. The moderators and speakers for the forum that's going to take place in what's supposed to be a balanced discussion. And it is dripping, packed to the rafters with NATO employees, people who've worked with NATO, people associated with the military and industrial complex, generals, brigadiers, lieutenant commanders of the military, academics who have published records. These aren't personal points. Published records of being pro-NATO, pro-EU militarisation and pro-NATO and US, UK, Western foreign policy agendas. In contrast, one speaker who has a record of pro-neutrality, anti-war activism. On, for example, the module on Ireland's engagement with NATO, there are 3 speakers. One of them is the Director of Security and Policy for NATO. One is one of our military personnel who's been seconded to NATO, and the third one is an academic who has a published record of arguing in favour of EU militarisation and closer alignment of Ireland to NATO. And that is typical of what this forum is about. So will you acknowledge that this is stacked? This forum is stacked for pro-NATO, pro-militarisation, anti-neutrality, propaganda, and that what we actually need is a balanced debate, a referendum, which there have been 5 bills in this House over recent years, every one of which Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael voted against, calling for a referendum on Ireland's neutrality.
Thanks, Deputy. I just want to confirm once again that Ireland is going to remain militarily neutral. We are not going to apply for NATO membership or membership of any military alliance, nor will we sign up to any mutual defence pact or mutual defence clause. And the Taoiseach has made that very clear on a number of occasions, as have I. However, the security threats facing our country have changed. There are cybersecurity threats, there are threats related to international terrorism, threats related to espionage, and also hybrid threats. We have to think about that as a country, and that's why the Taoiseach has established this forum to do exactly that. So the kind of things we will be doing, which we've been doing for some time now, is increasing our budget for defence, cooperating with our EU allies through PESCO, which we're now a founder member of and a full member of, and also cooperating with allies like US, like UK, like Canada, through the NATO Partnership for Peace process, of which we've been a member now for over 20 years. In terms of the forum itself, it'll begin this week on the 22nd of June in University College Cork, another meeting on the 23rd of June in University of Galway, and then again on the 26th and 27th of June in Dublin Castle. The forum is not a binary discussion on neutrality and was never intended to be. And there's no intention, as I said earlier, to change our policy of military neutrality. It is, however, the fundamental duty of government to rise to the challenging global situation that we face today. And since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February of last year, which blatantly violated the UN Charter. Every country in Europe has examined and re-examined its foreign and security policy and defence policies. It's very positive to see that over 900 people have already registered to take part over the 4 days, and we've already received 300 written submissions. There are 80 people moderating or speaking on panels over the 4 days, and they are people who have expertise in this area, people who have been involved in peacekeeping, in peace building, in conflict resolution internationally. There are moderators and panellists who include many Irish people who have on-the-ground experience of UN and EU operations in places like Chad and Afghanistan and Iraq and Ukraine and Georgia and Kosovo and Bosnia and Lebanon. It includes academics from Ireland as well as Sweden, Finland, Norway, which is a neutral country, Poland, Denmark and the UK, and there are senior Irish officials as well as people from NGOs, for example, like Oxfam and Concern. And of the 18 panel discussions over the 4 days, only one is about NATO and only 2 are about neutrality.
Any fair-minded person who looks at this will see it is dripping, stacked to the rafters with pro-NATO people and people associated with the military-industrial complex. I mean, for example, not a single speaker from the non-aligned movement. For people's information, the biggest movement of states in the world that are aligned, that are part of the non-aligned movement, that don't associate with the big military powers or identify with them, whether it's Russia, whether it's NATO or China. It has 120 members, not a single representative of that movement. NATO has 33 members and it's packed with representatives of NATO, people who work with NATO and NATO members. It is absolutely stacked in a particular direction, designed to condition opinion in a particular direction. We've had NATO military commanders in Cork assessing our troops. We've signed up to PESCO, which is all about interoperability with NATO. And you're seriously suggesting you're not by stealth trying to drag us into NATO. You mentioned breaches of the UN Charter, which Russia have clearly committed, but you say nothing about the breaches of human rights violations of states supported by the US and the UK, whether it's Israel, Saudi Arabia, or God knows who else. It's all bias because you're trying to move us away from neutrality, Taoiseach. Why won't you support a referendum on the issue of neutrality? A real, balanced debate.
Thank you.
Deputy, there's no hidden agenda here. I've told you exactly what we intend to do. We intend to increase and improve our own defence forces and our own defence capability. We are founder members and members of PESCO, which is European Foreign and Security Structure Cooperation, and for more than 20 years we've been part of NATO's Partnership for Peace. And interoperability is there to protect our troops, to make sure that our troops are safe and to make sure that they can act effectively in peacekeeping missions, being able to use the same equipment, being able to engage in joint operations with countries like Poland, for example, and Estonia, which we do in Lebanon. That's why those things are doing. There's no secrets here, Deputy. We're very clear about what our policy is. We're not going to be joining NATO or any other military alliance. We are going to be investing in our defence forces. We are founder members of structured cooperation at a European level in security and defence, and we have for more than 20 years been a NATO partner for peace.
Margaret Bugger,